What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be checking out the Transformers Legacy Evolution Deluxe Class Shadow Striker based on the Cyberverse universe. Now, this is one of the characters that I've been super excited for because unfortunately Cyberverse never really had an actual mainline. So for the longest time, you were either left with incredibly basic legend scale Transformers or some of those oversized quick changing releases, which, let's all be honest, never really looked great. So it's kind of cool to see her finally receive the Deluxe Class treatment. But as I'm sure you guys would have guessed already, Hasbro is once again back at it and have kind of Evo-Fusioned two designs together. So whilst the colour scheme and the head sculpt definitely is Cyberverse inspired, the entire design of the robot mode and especially the accessories are all taken from the RID Sideburn. So that is definitely a retool that we're going to get out of this mold in the future, and personally I actually really dig the way this figure looks. You know, in terms of kind of an updated Shadow Striker, I think she looks kind of sick. Now, as we get stuck into the details, super glad to see that Cyberverse head sculpt smacked onto a Deluxe Class figure because it does just look so awesome. I mean, check out that kind of enhanced cybernetic eye that we've got pegged onto the right hand side. That looks really awesome, and I also love the chest design. I mean, the way they've kind of smacked this engine piece into the center looks really awesome. In some ways, you know, it does kind of remind me of one heck of a lot of hot dogs smacked underneath a nice metallic silver grill, but yeah, really nice proportions. I like the way the arms look. In particular would be the hydraulics that are in the forearms, and she's one stacked figure. I mean, there are barely no hollow spaces on her at all. You know, as we take a look here at the inside of the leg, completely filled out, and she does feel pretty weighty, which is awesome. But yeah, a very accurate looking robot design, 2 RID Sideburns, so definitely excited to check that out when they eventually release it. But as we come around here to the back, as you guys would have noticed, barely no kibble, and that is mainly due to the way she transforms, which I'll get into in just a second. But these pieces are on hinge joints, so I guess in some ways you could kind of have them acting as a cape, which I think is pretty sweet. But in terms of her articulation, the head is on a ball joint, so it will look up and down. It can go left to right. The shoulders, once again, are a little strange in the way they've been engineered, and I don't know what it is about some of these legacy figures. For the most part, their shoulders are just super weird, but they don't look bad visually. But in terms of the way they move, it's definitely something which I have never seen on a Deluxe before. So they will go forward to a wicked range. They'll even go out to the sides, but they cannot move backwards, and it's because they're attached onto her backpack. Now, I can't recall ever seeing this on a Transformer beforehand, so yeah, it definitely does spice up the way she transforms, but I just thought it was something worth bearing in mind. We do get a nice bicep rotation as well as a single jointed elbow. The wrists can also rotate. If you take these kind of cloak pieces and hinge them out to the sides, we do get a really nice waist joint, and the hips are just awesome, so they can kick way past 90, exactly what you would expect from the character of Shadow Striker, which is awesome. They will kick back that far, go out to the sides. We do get a very sturdy thigh rotation, nice bend here out of the knee, and I love the articulation that we get out of the foot. So not only can it rock side to side, but it can also pivot forward, mainly due to transformation, but that just allows you to get her into so many dynamic poses, which is really sick. Now, as we very quickly check out a few of her accessories, this is the part where I can kind of see a few of you guys maybe being turned off by Shadow Striker, because due to how some of the accessories work, she is basically a parts former, which I was kind of surprised to see considering they've done such an amazing job with some of the Evo-Fusion Junkions. But anyway, first up here we have this massive riot shield. Now, to be honest, you don't really need to remove this for transformation. It does make things a little easier, but when I go through transformation, I'll show you guys how you can convert her with it attached. But very basic. I mean, it's basically the windshield and the roof. A very nice callback again to that RID Sideburn. We do get a double hinge joint, so you can smack it onto the side of her arm to kind of create this combat shield, or even peg it into the port that she has on the back. But an accessory which you definitely have to remove for transformation regardless would be the rear bumper. Now, considering it is so small, it is a shame to see them not integrate this into the transformation, but decent looking sculpt work. You know, again, you can have this acting as a shield, or you can Evo-Fusion it to her blaster to kind of recreate that crossbow looking weapon that the original RID Sideburn had. So I thought that was a pretty nice callback. You know, if you smack in a blast effect, it does kind of simulate a projectile, which I thought was pretty awesome. And in terms of the blaster, very nicely sculpted. I mean, as you guys can see, does kind of look like a blade because you can flip it upside down, and bang, again, you've got some more Evo-Fusion going on, as it does look like a dagger. Now, in addition to kind of pegging it into her hand like a weapon, you can also flip her here to the underside, make use of this tiny little kind of flight stand port, and then smack this tab in there, and that would be your blaster storage for robot mode. So for the most part, the accessories are cool, but it is just kind of a shame to see this bumper piece ultimately let her down in terms of that whole parts forming aspect. Now, as we get stuck into a few comparisons, here we have Legacy Shadow Striker alongside the Transformers Prime RC, and undoubtedly there may be a few of you guys wondering out there as to how I can be so lenient on Shadow Striker, despite much like RC, her being such a huge departure from how she looked on the show, and the only way that I can truthfully answer that is that just as a standalone deluxe, she's awesome. I mean, the design in itself is wicked, I love the articulation, you know, in terms of the way she feels, way nicer than Prime Universe RC. I just didn't like what they did with her design, you know, the kibble hanging off the side of the leg, the foot design, the way the knees were kind of engineered, and especially the accessories were just terrible on this Prime RC, whereas I've had so much more fun messing around with Shadow Striker. So that is ultimately why I am slightly more favourable of the design change here for Shadow Striker, but as you guys can see, you know, pretty much smack on in terms of a deluxe class size. Next up, we have another Prime-inspired character, that being Knockout, and if you guys will recall, I was also slightly more favourable of this design because it was just an enjoyable mould when in comparison to RC, despite, again, it being quite a departure from how he appeared on Prime. So, I don't mind the design change, but you've just got to make sure that the figure itself is solid, whereas I just don't think that was the case with RC at all. Next up, here we have her alongside the most recently released Legacy female Decepticon, that being Junkion Axel Grease, and these two right here have a lot of retool potential because, at least in terms of Axel Grease, I still 100% see a Transformers animated lockdown coming out of it, and as you guys can clearly see, not only will they give us an RID sideburn out of this mold, but maybe even that universe version of Shadow Striker. Here she is alongside the deluxe class Netflix Bumblebee, and finally the go-to Earthrise Optimus Prime. Now, as we get stuck into the transformation, as mentioned previously, I'm going to try my best to do it with the least amount of parts forming. So, to kickstart things off with, you will want to make sure that you smack this shield onto either side of the arms. It doesn't really matter which one, but it has to be in this position. So, next up, you're then going to want to take the knee joints, and they do just very softly click into place. So, do the same here for this side. We can then take the feet and basically just angle these sections here upwards. Then you'll want to take the hands and basically make it so that the top of the hand is now flush with the outside of the forearm. So do the exact same here for this side. So just rotate this piece like that. The next step is to basically take this entire back assembly and pull it away from the body. So we basically get this massive spine. So straighten all of these panels out. You can then take these sections here and flip them forwards and do the same here for this side. Now personally, I'd recommend to take the shoulder joints and hinge them upwards. It just makes things way easier later on due to a few clearance issues. Once you've done that, we can now take what will become the headlights and kind of push them forwards, which will then bring the entire chest piece forwards. That allows for enough clearance for us to fold them out, and then take this tiny little middle section and just snap it in there. Once you've done that, make sure you straighten this piece up, flip her here to the underside, and these little tabs are going to go into these little slots on the inside of the thigh. Now personally, I'd recommend to kind of use that thigh swivel just to very nicely slide it into place, and do the exact same here for this side. So bring the legs backwards and just slide that in there, and then as you guys can see, we do get these little tabs that are going to peg into some slots on the top of the foot. So just give that there a good old squeeze. Next up, you're then going to want to take the front of the vehicle and just snap this section here like that, and then in terms of the arms, we get these little slots here and here that will find themselves smacking into these little tabs. So bring this one down first of all, just line it up, and then bring this one down. Then what you're going to want to do is take these panels and snap them there into place and just snap that in. And as I'm sure you guys would have guessed, we do get these little slots here, 4 of them, that are going to peg into these little tabs. So just collapse this down. As I said, it is a little more fiddly if you do decide to transform this without any parts forming, but just try and line that up, and then hopefully that should just snap very nicely over the top. And then for some finishing touches, we have to bring in this bumper piece, which, as I'm sure you guys would have guessed, you still cannot transform with this attached, but this does very nicely just go over the top of that port. And bang! Here we have Shadow Striker fully transformed into this kind of really sick looking futuristic muscle car. Now, much like the robot mode, again, kind of a great callback to that RID sideburn mold, but still looking pretty cool. You know, they have slightly stylized it, I think for a few reasons, probably to kind of detract away from any licensing issues, but also so that it better fits in with Legacy and maybe the Cyberverse universe, because this whole front piece really does remind me of a Cyberverse vehicle, you know, with kind of the smooth angles and the wicked kind of blue highlights that we have for the headlights. headlights. Love the engine piece. I mean, it does look super sick here for the vehicle mode, and surprisingly, despite the roof being completely painted, the color match is pretty much smack on to the car's purple plastic. So yeah, great to see them kind of nail that with this figure, but I do like how the rims have been painted. Would have been cool to have seen them pinned on, but surprisingly, despite the mushroom pegs, she does roll like an absolute dream, and if you do smack on that rear bumper piece, it does make the vehicle look pretty solid. So you know, I guess the parts forming aspect isn't terrible when you take a look at it in the grand scheme of things, but this is what she looks like from the underside, and in terms of the old weapon storage, you do just smack her blaster here onto the top of the roof. Now, as we check out a few comparisons here for vehicle mode, here we have Shadow Striker alongside again that Prime Universe RC. Here she is stacked up alongside the Legacy Knockout, who I also believe was supposed to be a muscle car. So yeah, in terms of the scaling, I think they size up pretty nicely. She's slightly more streamlined, slightly more agile, but I do think that was kind of the approach they were going for with this character. Here she is alongside the Deluxe class Axle Grease, which overall is a much bigger figure due to it kind of borrowing elements from the scrap hook mold, but in terms of length, you know, pretty much smack on to what we saw from this figure. Here's the Netflix Earthrise Deluxe class Bumblebee. And then finally, the Earthrise Optimus Prime, just so you guys can really gather a sense of scale between these two releases. Now, as we very quickly get stuck into reverse transformation to kickstart things off, you are going to want to again detach that rear bumper. We can then take what are basically these side view mirrors and use them to pop this piece up. So once you basically get one side up, I then take the rear piece, and then that will just help you to kind of hinge all of this up. You'll then want to take these side doors and pull them outwards just like this on both sides. We can then take the arms and just attach them away from those tabs. Now what I'd recommend to do would be to take the headlights and kind of grab this piece so that you can push them upwards on both sides just like this, so that it's nice and loosened up. And then you're going to want to take the feet and just gently wriggle them away from the rear tabs, so do the same here. Once you've done that, you know, we can begin freeing up some of the tabs that we had smacked into the thighs previously, so just pull those out, bring those legs down. We can then take the feet and they'll just nicely kind of soft click into place. We can slightly bend the knees just to disengage their vehicle mode position. In terms of the spinal column, you know, just kind of swing it to the back for now. Take this middle piece and push this in all the way so that it's completely flat, just like this. We can then take the headlights, swing these here to the back, snap this whole chest unit in just like that. And then in terms of the shoulders, take these pieces, bring them out to the sides, and then just collapse this whole spinal column in upon itself, rotate here at the wrists on both sides, and bang, there is Shadow Striker back in her robot mode. And so, wrapping up on this review for the Legacy Evolution Deluxe Class Shadow Striker. Overall, I think it's an incredibly solid entry. I mean, yes, it's very different to how I initially visioned a Legacy Cyberverse Shadow Striker, but I do like how they kind of Evo-Fusioned that RID Sideburn design along with a Cyberverse Shadow Striker, because it does cause for quite a striking design, I guess you could say, and the figure is just solid. I mean, that is one of the biggest praises that I think I can give it, despite it being such a huge departure from her Cyberverse design. She is way nicer to handle, way nicer to articulate than the Prime Universe RC. The only area which I can think of is being a little strange would be the way the shoulders have been engineered, but personally, I don't think they are nowhere near as much of an issue as what we saw from the Legacy Armada Megatron and even the G2 Laser Prime. Transformation, straightforward enough. I mean, yes, there is that whole kind of parts forming aspect where you have to remove the rear bumper. Would have been cool to have seen them integrate that into the conversion, considering it is such a tiny piece, but I do like how the windshield can stay permanently attached to the figure, so that's pretty cool. And the vehicle mode, I don't have any issues with it at all. It is solid, it looks great, painted really nicely, detailed really well, so yeah, bring on Sideburn and bring on an updated version of a Universe Shadow Striker. I'd love to get your thoughts on this character down in the comment section below. What do you guys think of her new redesign? And until my next video, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.